Lisa, doing some jelly printing today. I want to show you what I created yesterday. I had not done any jelly printing in quite some time, and I just had this notion I wanted to play, and I was really pleased with the results I got. So I'm going to try to, I don't want to say duplicate, because you can never get the same thing twice, I don't think, in jelly printing, but to get something similar, to use the same techniques that I used yesterday to create some designs this morning. These were the ones that I created. This is the first one I did, and it's just on regular white cardstock, and it's a real smooth cardstock. It's a Nina cardstock I get at Walmart, cover weight. And actually, I'm not sure I got it at Walmart. I get it at Office Depot. That's where I get it. But anyway, I used the 3x5 jelly plate. I think this... somebody recommended this to me when I first started jelly printing, and I'm thinking, why do you want one that's small? But you get so much control, and you get to do a lot of really fun things with it. And I used some golden open paints. The open paints stay wet longer, so you can get more pulls on your jelly print plate than you can with regular paint. And but you can use regular paints as well. These are just happen to be some coordinating colors that I used. Sort of a monochromatic look. There's a little bit of metallic in here. There was a tiny bit of brown in this one. So we're going to do something very similar to this. The others that I created were on cardstock. This was a green cardstock, and of course the yellow paint pretty much completely covered it. These two cardstocks were double-sided cardstocks. This was not blue on the other side, but it was a light green color. And again, the yellow covered a lot of it, but you may be able to see some of the background peeking through, and it coordinates with the colors that I was using. This one had a silvery gray color on this side, and that gave me a really neat result with some blues and green colors, and I used some regular acrylic paints along with that as well, and then just a touch of the yellow on top and a little bit of white. So this particular kind of cardstock is good for this because it's thin. It's a little too thin to use for card making, but it's wonderful for jelly printing because the paint gives it a little more body, so you can do more with the cardstock when you get finished. So let's create some that are similar to this, or at least with a similar technique. We'll get different things, and especially since I've pulled out some different stencils than the ones I had out yesterday. Just wanted to change this morning. I have some Crafters Workshop stencils. I have an old needlepoint canvas and a few other found objects. I found this in a book that I bought for the book paper, and it was tucked in, it was a dictionary, I think, and it was tucked in the back. And so it's the kind of thing you might have used in school to draw your circles and all for drafting class, or just a regular maybe math class, and it's been a wonderful stencil. I love using it. This is one I cut on the probably the silhouette, or the cricket. Yeah, this would have been cut on the silhouette. I have a couple that I've cut on the cricket before with film, the stuff you can get at Hobby Lobby, stencil stuff, plain stencil things you can cut. There, I've talked about that in other videos. This is leftover from Stamping Up, where you get buy stamps and then you punch out the designs, and it just happens to be a good circular one. And I have some that are odd shapes as well. So those are some stencils that I'm going to use, and the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to start with a piece of that very smooth cover weight white cardstock, and we're going to try to use those same colors with the yellows on this first one, and the next one we're going to do a bunch of purples. But let me find my roller, and we'll get started with the yellows. I should call it a brayer, not a roller. And I'm also putting on some disposable gloves. I get mine from Sally's Beauty Supply, but you can use any that you want if you want to keep that paint off your hands. It makes it really easy to stop and answer the phone and things like that, just to slip the gloves on and off. Now these first few, I ended up with quite a bit of paint on them, and you don't get to see as much of the design. Also, with the golden open acrylics, you can actually take the paint that's on the brayer and go back over the jelly plate again, and even get more out of that paint. So as I keep going here, you'll start to see the design a little bit more. I'm going to work with the little needlepoint canvas thing. I have had, that probably goes back to the 80s. It was just something when I was looking around a long time ago. I started jelly printing for things that I could use. I found that. and it makes some really cool impressions. I find that if I put the paint on the jelly plate and then press the stencil into it and remove the stencil, then I get a really neat look to these prints. And this one I think looks great, and even in the second press as well. So we're just kind of filling in all of the gaps, adding a little bit of metallic and from an inexpensive craft paint. And we'll just fill in a little bit more on this one. Kind of rubbing it around the edges too. And then the last thing I'm going to do is to take some of this metallic paint, and I'm going to use my needlepoint piece here just to press directly on it, kind of like stamping. And that adds a little bit of very light print to the edge. And then I rolled a little bit of color along the edges as well, just sort of finish off those. Now I could use this print as an 8.5 by 11, or I could cut it up into other designs. And it's probably what I'm going to do with these next two, and I'll show you that at the end, what paper I'm going to use them with. I have some cardstock here that has kind of a silvery look to it, a grayish tone, and I want to do several shades of purples, lavenders. These colors are very hard to find in scrapbooking, so I'm making my own paper. And I'm just using a bunch of different purple paints. Some of them are the Martha Stewart Pearl paints. A lot of them are just inexpensive acrylics as well, just to add some layers. I have some different stencils. I like to use a variety of stencils that have some geometric shapes that are more chevron kind of lines and things, and then others that are more rounded, like I've got a damask stencil here that I'm going to be using, and that softer edges to things looks really good with the more geometric. Now, one thing I noticed right off with working with these paints is that I don't get as many presses with them as I do with the Golden Open paints. But I'm getting some really pretty colors. And I'm adding a little bit of dark blue here as well on this for these colors. And what I'm using there is a piece of leftover chipboard where I had chipboard letters that just popped out of it. I think it was originally from Basic Gray, and those are just some scraps of stuff that I used in my scrapbooking that work well as jelly printing tools. There's all kinds of things you can use. The bottom of an egg carton. I mean, there's just endless things that you can use for making tools for your jelly printing. And here's that fun stencil that I found in the back of a book. And that gives us some different kinds of shapes to contrast with the stencils. I've also got a little bit of silver metallic paint. Even though the background was a silvery gray, this adds another layer to things. And I went off to get, I had a round stencil laid out, one that I had cut with the Cricut once upon a time, and I couldn't find it. I ended up finding it on the floor when I got all these done and had fallen off the table. But I just went and got a different round stencil to sort of finish out this design. Now, to sort of smooth things out a little bit, I wanted a little more of that damask design. I'm using a stiff bristle brush and the stencil and just applying some of the paint straight onto my background. So I'm not really jelly printing now, I'm just stenciling a little bit of the design on there. There's nothing that says that you can't add things on top of your jelly prints. You can stamp on them, you could add rub-ons to them, you could do you know, any kind of design, direct painting directly on them or coloring them in some way, you know, whatever you wanted to enhance your prints. I had a little place there that was kind of open. I wanted to add a little bit more of that navy color to sort of make it balanced. And then I've already started one here that was on a pink background with some purple colors, and I'm adding a little bit more color to it. And I'm using something that a friend gave me. It's was originally, I think, to be used in cake decorating, like for a fondant design, do some kind of design around the outside. I don't know that much about cake decorating anymore, but she got it at Michael's. It was fairly large, and I cut it up, and she gave me half of it. She kept half of it, and I was still able to get one that fit an 8.5 by 11 size and one that fit my smaller size jelly plate as well. But it just was another thing to make a design with. I'm going to use some of those same stencils again. This one I add a little brown to it, and I have a reason for that. You'll see that again at the end when we look and see what these purple papers are going to be used for. So these are mostly purple blues, kind of a monochromatic look with just a little bit of contrast. And here again I've added a little bit of stenciling over the top with a little bit of purple, and this helps to blend the edges from where the 3x5 plates come together, or don't come together. So let's take a look at these. Yellow one with the little bit of extra stamping with that needlepoint piece. And then these two, the second one I did some stenciling using a brush for that last little bit. So you can kind of get an idea of these. And they came out really different, not just from the paints that I used, but you can see some of the background. And this one started out the grayish paper, and this one started out as a pink paper, so you got a very different look too to the background. And the reason I was doing these is I've got to do a layout coming up that I need purple designer paper, and this is kind of it in terms of the purple designer paper that I have a full sheet of, and I want something to coordinate so that I can maybe cut up in flower designs or something to go on the page. So either one of these are going to have some purples that will match. So this is going to give me the greatest contrast. This one I wanted a little bit of the brown because I went to look at this paper and realized that sort of strikes me as a little bit more of a brownish tone to it. So I think either one of these will work, and they give me colors that are just difficult to find in scrapbooking. So I had a lot of fun with my jelly plate today. You could do the same kind of thing with round or other shaped jelly plates, and you don't end up with as many prints as you do when you do the 8x10 size, but I really like the quality of the prints that I got today. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope you liked the video.